remember it very well. My mother and my father divorced that year, and my life changed dramatically. I went from living in my own home with my own room to living in a 2-bedroom, share-the-bath apartment. It had been a very tough year, but Halloween was just around the corner. And I decided that year not to take any chances. I was going to make my own costume, which really wasn't going to be terribly difficult because when my parents divorced, my mother told me that I had to take a lot more responsibility, that I had to help her. So if a button fell off my shirt, I sewed it back on at 9 years old. If I split a seam in my pants, I was the one that sewed it back. It's all true. So it was really no difficulty whatsoever making my own costume. I decided to be a hobo that year. Took an old pair of jeans, sewed a lot of patches on them. Of course, hobos have patches. Everybody knows that. A flannel shirt. Some cigarette ashes to smudge up my face. All hobos have dirty faces, don't they? Rushed home from school. Put on my costume. This wasn't just to be Halloween. This was to be a very, very special Halloween. See, I was living in Collingswood, New Jersey at the time, and the next town over, Westmont, had a Halloween parade. And I was to be allowed to go to the Halloween parade at night by myself. For the first time in my life, I was being trusted. I was being allowed. I was being permitted to leave the house in the evening, after dark, and go to a Halloween parade in Westmont. It was going to be quite a day. So I rushed home from school, and I went out about my duties collecting candy while it was still daylight. And I ran from house to house. I collected not 1, not 2, but 3 paper shopping bags. Full. I mean full. You couldn't get any more in them. And I came back home with my 3 shopping bags of candy, and I left them on the red couch. Wolfed down my dinner and set out for the Halloween parade in Westmont. Well, well, well. So this is what it's like to be a grown-up. This is what it's like to be outdoors after dark without your mom around. It was an exciting parade. There were floats. There were marching bands. There were people in costumes that were great. Not little silly-ass pirate suits or store-bought tigers. Oh, no. It was incredible. Well, finally the parade was over. And I went home. I was to be home by 9 o'clock. And I was there perhaps a minute or 2 early. And I came into the house and I looked over at the couch, and where once there had been 3 bags full of candy, there was nothing. And I said, what happened to my candy? Where'd you put my candy, Mom? My mother had 2 sisters. One of them was named Marie. Marie was married to a bricklayer. A bricklayer who didn't work every winter. And while winter had yet to set in, it wasn't too far away. And Marie and her 4 children had stopped by the house that very evening. And Marie, knowing that she was facing a hard winter, didn't have any money for costumes for her children on Halloween. My mother, who had much less money than Marie, graciously gave not 1, not 2, but all 3 bags of my Halloween booty to my cousins. I hate Halloween. I had noticed when I was a little bit younger, perhaps, like on my way to school or something, right before Halloween, I'd be walking down the street, and an adult, a grown-up, would come out of a house and go towards her car parked to the curb and see it all soaped up, would utter words that I had never heard before. It was harmless mischief, the soaping of a windshield or a side window or a back window on a car. But it meant that the grown-up had to wash the car to get it off. Well, the strangest thing happened in my town right before Halloween. This may seem hard to believe for those of you who did not grow up when I grew up, who did not grow up where I grew up, but it became virtually impossible for a child to buy a bar of soap in Collingswood, New Jersey. I remember one year going up to the A&P on Haddon Avenue, going in, selecting a fine bar of Ivory soap, coming toward the checkout counter and having the manager, George, come up to me and say, "What do you want with that bar of soap?" "Oh, George, my mom sent me here to, get a bar of soap." "Nothing else, just a bar of soap?" Yeah, we're all out of soap." "Not out of milk?" "No, got plenty of milk." "Nor butter, nor bread?" "Oh, got plenty of them, just out of soap." You wouldn't mind if I called to your mother to check, would you? And you would simply hand the bar of soap over to George and leave empty-handed. The soaping of windshields was obviously something that distressed adults to no end. And for the chance to get even with an adult, with a grown-up, at that tender age was virtually unheard of. To do something that wasn't at all really destructive, but annoyed the hell out of him, was far, far, far more desirable than walking around collecting bags of crappy candy. Candied corn and apples. Ah, phooey! Blah, blah. No, mischief. Mischief is clearly where it was at. Mischief was what Halloween was really all about. And so I gave up collecting candy and I joined the mischief makers. If there are any young people in the audience, let me give you a tip from an older mischief maker. Not being able to buy any soap, I had to steal soap from my house. My mother had a large bar of Fell's Napta soap. I don't know if they still make it, but if they do, it leaves virtually no mark whatsoever. Don't use Fell's Napta soap. That year was not a good year. I never actually saw anyone come out of a house in the morning to a car that I had soaped its windows the night before, so I never really got to see anybody uttering obscenities at my handiwork, but I knew that it happened, and I had seen other people in previous years go bonkers. And there was a great family that lived down the street and around the corner from me, a fantastic family. I grew up right outside of Philadelphia. And while the winters are not terribly, terribly harsh in Philadelphia, they're real. They do have them. And by the end of October, except in very, very unusual situations, the weather has already started to turn. It is not the kind of time of the year in that area of the country where you do much in the way of sitting outdoors. And there was this one home down the street and around the corner, one of the very few homes in the entire area that I do not know the name of the family that lived there. But they had a detached garage that sat slightly to the left of the house, slightly behind the house. And to the side of the detached garage was a patio. And on that patio was outdoor furniture. Relatively lightweight outdoor furniture. And every year that furniture would be out there until Halloween. Even though many weeks had gone by since the family that lived in that house was really able to use it. Well, me and several of my friends decided that it would really, really be fun to take that furniture from the patio and place it on the roof over the patio in the exact same configuration that it had been on the patio. And we would sneak up there at night for 2 or 3 or 4 years in a row. the furniture and put it up on the roof and arrange it in the exact same configuration. Laughing our full heads off all the time. Doing the deed and going home. Getting up the following morning to go see our handiwork on the way to school. And by the following morning, the furniture had been removed from the roof and placed back on the patio in the exact same configuration. This went on for years, and sometimes 2 or 3 times during the course of a mischief season. I have no idea, as I said, who lived in that house. One of the very few houses in town, I didn't know who lived there. In years gone by, long past my prime in climbing up on garage roofs, it suddenly dawned on me. These people knew what was happening. They waited for us. And then as soon as we left and went home, they went up and got the furniture, put it back. So that the following morning when we went to see our handiwork, it had been undone. And right after Halloween, the furniture was put indoors. I hate this time of year. It's filled with nothing but bitter, bitter, bitter memories. But none more bitter than my career as a pumpkin smasher. The Browns lived 2 doors from the intersection of Park and Conard Avenue. It was a large, large white house, and unlike most of the homes in Collingswood, it didn't have a large front porch. It only had a very small cement porch, really a landing from the 4 or 5 steps up from the ground to the front door. Just really large enough for 2 or 3 people to stand there while waiting for the master of the home to open the door, and you would go in, and they had this pumpkin that sat right there on the landing. The house was even relatively close to the street, not much of a big front yard. It probably wasn't more than 15 or 20 feet from the sidewalk to Brown's pumpkin. I think every boy in Collingswood, New Jersey had tried to get Brown's pumpkin. It was an absolute trophy. And eagerly, we would all quiz each other in the morning at the schoolyard as to whether or not anyone had gotten Brown's pumpkin. Heads would drop. Eyes would divert. And slowly, one by one, the roll call would be called, and it was always the same. Well, no. A boy that could get Brown's pumpkin is a boy that would have infamy. A boy that could get his hands on Brown's pumpkin would be the envy of every other boy in that community, and half of the men who had grown up also unable to get Brown's pumpkin. I was 13 years old. It was clearly the end of my career. You did reach a point where it was no longer cool to go out and steal pumpkins. And I knew that I didn't have many more seasons, if indeed any seasons left. And I decided what a crowning achievement it would be if I could snatch Brown's pumpkin. I only lived a block away. And I'm telling you, there it sat in all its glory right there on that stoop. Just a few feet away from the sidewalk. How was it possible? How was it possible that in all these years, no one, not Mike Madden, not Buddy Johnson, not Freddie Fenton, no one had ever snatched the pumpkin in front of Brown's house? Well, no doubt that night I lied to my mother again about having a book report to do or something at the library, and I left the house and started in the direction of the library, which is 180 degrees away from where the Browns lived. And no doubt walked a block or two until I was confident that I was no longer in view of any of the windows at my place. Did a very, very large U-turn, going quite a number of blocks out of my way, headed toward the Browns, confident that I would be the boy who stole Brown's pumpkin. I doubled back along Park Avenue until I could see the large white house. The large, shimmering white house with a beautiful, beautiful orange pumpkin sitting there on the stoop. I didn't know anything about the Browns other than their name. I didn't know how many children they had. I didn't even know if they had any children. Apparently they had quite a number of them. And each night, one of the Brown children would be assigned to lay on the floor in the vestibule, peeking through the mail slot, waiting for some stupid young boy to sneak up and head for the front door with his eyes affixed on that orange treasure. And as you would get within 2-3 feet of it, the young Brown laying on his or her stomach would fling the front door open and scream at the top of their lungs, "Daddy! Daddy! Somebody's here to steal the pumpkin!" Which, of course, would freeze you in your tracks, cause you to turn around and run as fast as you possibly could, empty-handed. That was a long, long time ago. A long time ago. And in all those years, I've never attempted to steal anyone's pumpkin and smash it in the street in front of their house. It's not that I haven't thought about it. I think about it almost every year. You see, you look at a pumpkin and you think, oh, fall, autumn. Or you think, oh, jack-o'-lantern, Halloween. Or you think, oh, pumpkin pie, Thanksgiving. You have warm, fuzzy feelings when you look at a pumpkin. Not me. I look at a pumpkin and I think, you're getting old. You can't do it anymore. A pumpkin to me is a loss of youth, a loss of virility. A pumpkin to me is giving in, admitting that your time is short. I've told this story before. I've had people call me up and say, look, Bob, I live at such and such a place. I'll leave a pumpkin out tonight. Just come by and get it, you know? Smash it in the street. It'll make you feel better. People are nice, you know? People understand. And I have literally had people make that offer to me. But it wouldn't be the same. And now I think of myself sneaking, with my bones creaking, grunting and groaning, huffing and puffing, up someone's front walk onto their porch, picking up a 10, 15, 20-pound pumpkin and attempting to run 30 or 40 feet. Probably kill me. Now, the last time I gave serious thought to this would be about 10 years ago. And I gave very serious thought to it. I was living in Chicago. I was living in a high-rise. My parking place was on the 6th floor of the garage. On the 4th floor of the garage, right at the very top of the ramp, was an empty space. At least it was empty almost every time I came in. But up against the wall, there were a number of things. There was a bag of old golf clubs and a couple of boxes, and this year there was something else. There was a pumpkin. A fresh pumpkin in the parking garage. I, of course, immediately noticed it. It'd been there for many, many days. Every night I would come home from work, drive up the ramp, get to the 4th floor, and there would be the pumpkin right in front of my face. The garage was usually deserted. It wouldn't have taken very much to stop the car. Snatch the pumpkin, smash it, get back in the car, and drive up to the 6th floor. It wouldn't have taken very much at all, and it would have been the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. Okay, granted, it wasn't the challenge of Brown's pumpkin or something like that. And granted, the guys down in the lobby would have seen who did it because the place was filled with security cameras, but that's okay. I went into work that day and I talked about it. I talked about how I was probably going to do it. To this day, I don't know if the people who owned the pumpkin had some plan for it and went down and brought it back up to their apartment, or if they listened to my show. Because that night when I went home, the pumpkin was gone. It was my last serious, realistic shot. People don't put pumpkins out as much as they used to. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've seen one yet this year. Well, it's still a little early. No, it's not, is it? I don't know what young boys do for mischief now. And I'm glad that people don't put pumpkins out on their front porches, because to this day it would tempt me. But I must concede that my career as a pumpkin thief is long behind me. I was never that successful at it anyway. I was always just a very marginal pumpkin thief. My top score being 12, which is nothing. I mean, a boy should have 12 on the first night. Not for the entire week. Oh, yeah. It was one last bitter Halloween disappointment. I didn't dress up in costume after the age of 9, except for 1 year. I was living in Norfolk. I was in my early 30s. And I hung around with a theater crowd. And Jake Vesparelli was holding a Halloween party. And it was mandatory if you attended the Halloween party that you attend in costume. I didn't have a lot of money. But I decided if I had to go to this silly-ass party and I had to go in a silly-ass costume, people would remember it. So I went to a costumer's shop, and I rented a European clown suit for $110. This is like, 20 years ago. This is serious money. Probably more than I made in a week. And if not, close to it. It was a magnificent costume. Absolutely, positively magnificent, with a tall, pointed hat, gigantic, oversized shoes, a red, bulbous nose, the white grease paint all over my face. I knew that I was going to be the hit of the party. I looked ridiculous in this suit. Absolutely ridiculous. Halloween night came. I put my costume on, got in the car, and I drove over to Becker Road where Jake lived. I got out of the car and went into the house, just ever so slightly late, knowing that almost everyone who was going to be there was already there, and I stepped through the door. I enjoyed 3 minutes of the greatest adulation I have ever known in my entire life. Everyone was extremely impressed. I clearly was the hit of the night. There was no denying it. And then there was a woman who, along with her husband and their son, were the first family of Norfolk Theater. Her name was Marty Rowe. For the life of me, I can't remember the name of her kid. Marty was perhaps in her late 40s at the time. The kid was about 18 or 19. They showed up. Just moments after I had shown up. Marty came dressed as her son. Her son came dressed as Marty. It was amazing. All of the people who had been standing around me and congratulating me on my great costume, saying that they had never seen anything like it, their mouths dropped when Marty and her kid came into the house. Not just in costume, but in character. And they would not break the character. Suddenly, I'm left standing all alone in my $110 clown suit, with not a soul paying any attention to me. I hate this day. It's a lifelong string of bad memories and disappointments. When I'm king, there ain't gonna be no more stupid-ass Halloween. Gone. It's history. Banned. Any talk of it. Any book that it's mentioned in, burn it. Any stupid ass that tries to talk about it or remember it, the rack. Hey, you want to talk a little more about Halloween? Okay. Twist the wheel. I can't wait for this day to be over, so that we can get on with our lives. Not have to go back and relive all the bitter disappointments. It's the only day of the year I remember that fateful lunchtime trip down Woodland Avenue in my pirate suit. There aren't very many of us in this life who have to admit who have actually ever done what I did that afternoon in full view of everyone. I mean, it wouldn't have been so bad if she had let me wear jockey shorts or something. But no. It was boxer shorts for Bobby. She had read someplace where, a boy could become sterile or something, And she wanted grandchildren. She wanted grandchildren. So I had to take a dump on Woodland Avenue and have it fall out of my skirt because she wanted grandchildren. I made damn sure she didn't get any.
Hey, Bob. Hey, Bob. Hey, Bob.
970 WFLA.
Carmen, honey.
You're on the air 970 WFLA.
I am naked right now.
No, I'll bet you are. You're on the air 970 WFLA.
Your evidence. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So anyway, as I was saying, let's go to St. Petersburg on a cell phone. Saint, you're on the air 970 WFLA.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Saint.
If I had a computer, how would I hear the radio station through a computer? My sister lives in Louisville, and she's a good friend of April's, and she would like to hear the radio.
April won't be here long.
Oh, she won't?
No, they just made her a promotions assistant.
What's that?
About halfway to the parking lot.
Oh, is that who gives all that money away for the credit cards?
No, that's the person that has to go out on her own and hang banners on her weekends when formerly she used to, do like housework or go out with her kids, that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, it's a 73-hour-a-week job for which they get paid for 31.
She can enlist the help of her kids, though, carrying the card tables and stuff, so it shouldn't be a problem.
She's pretty small.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it takes a little more than a computer. You also have to have a good internet connection and a sound card in your computer, and, little things like that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it just doesn't go magically through the air from computer to computer.
Oh, it doesn't?
No.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering.
Okay.
Well, anyway, Renee
like I said, April won't be here long.
Renee says hi to April, though.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Whoa, talk about deja vu. There's a name from the past. Let's go to Tampa. Hi, Tampa. You're on the air 970 WFLA.
Whoa, talk about deja vu. There's a name from the past. Let's go to Tampa. WFLA.
God, it's what, about a 20-second delay today? Oh, pity poo. Somehow that got lost. Darn. No, please call back again, sir. Darn. Accidentally got dumped, and with a 2-hour delay today, there's no chance. First of all, aren't any. But even if there were, I don't think they sell this right. And they have the top talk radio audiences by size listed here in the country. And, of course,
it all starts at 2.
I don't look at the polls. Who cares?
It all starts at 2 o'clock right here on News Radio 970 WFLA, the Knolls, the Gators, WFLA, 2 p.m. That's a Saturday.
Does that mean they won't have that Surf the Net for Senior Citizens show on?
That's absolutely correct.
Be darned. 990 WFLA in Hillsborough. Let's go to Lutz. Lutz, you're on there at 970 WFLA.
Hey, Bob, I guess he probably told you that they came up with a nickname for you while you were off the air, too. It was the nickname, I think if it was correct, was Blobby Lazy Lassiter.
Uh-huh.
I could not believe it.
I'll be damned.
So did he tell you about that?
No.
I would have thought he would have reported such a blatant name-calling incident.
Gee, I wonder who wrote it for her. Must have been Jeffy.
I think he was probably involved.
I think so, too.
I wonder if the city council, and headed by Mayor Dickey, who's been in the Tanga Lounge more times than I have, which is precisely 0 times that I've been in the Tanga Lounge, if the politicians told the public that it may cost them millions of dollars to wipe these clubs off the face of the planet, that they would have so much support from all the moralists that are out there. My understanding is if you tried to buy the Tanga Lounge and shut it down, like in a normal legal way, like let's talk about condemnation or something like that, you might spend as much as $15 million to try to buy out that club and shut it down. And I just don't think that the politicians have really made it really clear how expensive a war this is going to be. Furthermore, in terms
You're dropping the bucket next to a football stadium.
6:30. Good evening. Don Richards, News Radio 970 WFLA. Top local story, no release.
In Tampa, wrapping up a couple of accidents and one reported. Dale, Mabry, and Waters. No injuries there. Armenia and Elm, north of Hillsborough, had a crash. And some injuries on 40th Street to the north of I-4. Traffic's remained heavy through the downtown Tampa interchange. And a minor accident northbound around Howard, Armenia. A breakdown just north of there, but nothing directly blocking traffic. In Pinellas County, still on the scene at 110th Avenue North and US 19. Had an injury crash there. And a couple of 66th Street, 13th Avenue North, as well as 9th Street and 33rd Avenue North. Traffic every 10 minutes on the 10s. Gary McHenry, News Radio 970 WFLA.
William Hale will be sent to a center for violent sexual offenders, not released when his sentence for dealing in stolen property ends. Hillsborough prosecutors convinced a jury that since Hale's been convicted of 2 rapes, he's likely to rape again. Manatee deputies say 36-year-old Larry Hamilton of North Carolina is the man who killed Benny Anderson. His body found in the Days Inn in Bradenton this week. Motive? They say Hamilton was ashamed of the sex acts the two had performed. Higher Education Chancellor Adam Herbert says he backs the governor's plan to end affirmative action in college admissions, saying it's a thoughtful response to an extremely divisive issue. The 970 WFLA forecast from News Channel 8 meteorologist Steve Jervey. Partly cloudy tonight, 59 for a low, and partly cloudy on Friday, up to 78. Much the same for the weekend. A 20% chance of late-day showers on Saturday. Color radar clear at your official weather station. In Sarasota and Plant City, 70. St. Petersburg.